What's up, guys? Welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host, Zach, and today's subreddit is r/FatPeopleStories. Alright, this story's called Cousin Carney Part 5. The Infestation. I mentioned that at one point, Carney had been coming over to watch her TV shows at my house, but that stopped when she started watching Hulu and Netflix at home, which was better for everyone. But at some point after that, we started doing movie night every few weeks, picking a night when both our husbands were otherwise occupied. She'd bring over some movies she'd bought or rented, and I'd provide the popcorn and drinks, and we'd watch movies. I didn't always like her choice in movies, but she was just lonely and needed the company. We always watched her choice of movies because it was just easier to watch what she wanted to watch than to convince her to watch something I liked. This story really isn't about the movies though. I always hosted movie nights because I wouldn't go to her house. Her 3 dogs were poorly civilized and mean. They hadn't trained the dogs at all, unless you count training them to be mean so they would scare anyone who might want to break in. Carney, however, always laughed and thought it was cute that they were so protective. She didn't think they would actually hurt anyone and didn't really understand why no one liked her dogs. And maybe it was a good thing that they were so protective, given the part of town they lived in. But she really needed to understand why friends and potential friends might be afraid of them, rather than whining via memes on Facebook about how misunderstood pit bull mixes were. One of the dogs tried to attack me once. She had him on the leash at the time, so I was able to jump back, but he caught my shirt in his mouth and ripped it. She giggled about it and laughed that he was just overly excited. She didn't apologize or even feel embarrassed about it. The next time I stopped by, she promised to have them locked in crates, but then they just barked and snarled the whole time, making it difficult to carry on conversation and gave me a headache. On another occasion, when she had someone else at her house, she locked the dogs in the bedroom. But that didn't work either. There was a cheap cork board door and they ripped through it to get into the living room to defend their property. Point being, part of her loneliness probably had a lot to do with having no money to go out and do things. But she couldn't invite friends over to her house either, so she needed some friend who was willing to invite her over. Meanwhile, on my side of town, I had been doing a trap and release program with the stray cats, taming them enough to catch them, get them spayed or neutered, shots, and sometimes finding homes for them. Call me the crazy cat lady, but I just have a soft spot for strays and I'm a bit of a cat whisperer. Of course, I'm never gonna solve the stray cat problem, but I can't help but try to do what I can to reduce the animal population and maybe avoid the spread of rabies. At the time of the story, I was working on taming a couple of sibling feral cats, just enough to bring them to a friend who lives on a farm because he wanted a couple of barn cats who might be good mousers. One morning, I realized one of my indoor cats was scratching, and upon closer inspection, noticed he'd ripped a lot of hair out from behind his ears. This explained some of the little rash on my ankles. My house was infested with fleas! Ah! I was mortified. My husband wasn't amused and lectured me about being more careful with those strays, and that if I'd had any sense, I'd been flea training them from the beginning. Yes, dear, you're right. I felt awful about all the little trouble we had to go through, but chalked it up to a lesson learned. We set to cleaning the house to rid ourselves of the fleas and treating all the cats, including the strays I could get close enough to. Carney was asking about coming over for movie night, and I put her off because I didn't want to admit my house was flea infested. She, even more than my husband, had thought I was foolish working with the stray population. So I imagined she'd make some kind of snippy, "I told you so," comment about how this is what I get for messing with the stray cats in the first place when she found out. Look, at this point in our friendship, we may have started to move more into a bit of a frenemies relationship. I admit I would go into mom mode with her sometimes when I thought she was acting ridiculous and childish, and I'd likely hurt her feelings by doing it. And sometimes I felt like she was looking for ways to zing me back, and I understood that. So I fully expected in this case for her to be giddy about getting to lecture me in an "I told you so" way about the stray cats, and I simply didn't want to hear it while I was still fighting the flea infestation. But more importantly than that, I didn't want her to come over because she had dogs at home, and I might not have had kind feelings toward her dogs, but I still didn't want to inflict fleas on them, so I just put her off a couple of weeks. When the infestation was over, I gave in when she wanted to come over for a movie night. After she came in and sat down and I was putting the movie in the DVD player, I admitted to her what had been going on. I should warn you, we've had a bit of a problem with fleas lately. I'm 99% sure they're gone, but before you leave, you'll probably want to use that flea spray stuff on your clothes, just to be safe. I half expected she might be upset and say something like,
"What? You didn't warn me you might have fleas before I came over?"
because that might have been my reaction if the positions were reversed. Look at me, expecting a normal reaction from Carney. I'm hilarious. Instead, she just laughed it off.
"Oh, don't worry about that. My dogs already have fleas." Oscar won't stop scratching all the time. I think he's got it the worst. He's probably had them for a few weeks now.
I was stunned. To this day, I still have a hard time imagining anyone laughing off having fleas in their house. She didn't think it was a big deal at all. I guess it's no surprise she wasn't treating them for fleas, as her pets were getting no routine care at all. 2 dogs were female and 1 was male. None of them fixed. So often I had to listen to her complaining about how one of the female dogs was in heat and she had to keep the animals apart because they didn't want puppies. But of course she had no money to pay for them to be spayed or neutered or even get their annual shots. I would send her the information about the low-cost spay and neuter program they had in town, but she wasn't interested. I told her to be sensible. At least get the male dog neutered as a precaution. Neutering, after all, is generally cheaper anyway. She didn't care. Thankfully, no puppies ever resulted. However, one of her female dogs ended up with some sort of uterine infection that would have been avoided had she been spayed. The dog ended up having an emergency hysterectomy that I'm certain Carney's mother ended up paying for. And just a note about her mother. I had met Carney's mother a couple of times, and she seemed like a reasonable person of sound judgment and maturity, with a good career and a stable life. Not a Carney at all. I don't know how she screwed up in raising Carney. Sometimes I wished I'd had Carney's mother's phone number so we could have had some "how do you solve a problem like Carney" chats. Back to fleas. After I got over my initial stunned reaction, I started to think about how it wasn't that surprising she had fleas. She lived in a run-down part of town in a small apartment building with low-income neighbors who moved in and out fairly quickly. She also worked at a really run-down, cheap motel with odd clientele. I'm not trying to knock all poor people, only that in those situations there might be more opportunities to catch or spread fleas. Wait a minute. Did you bring fleas into my house?
Huh?
My husband has been ranting at me for 3 weeks about how I brought fleas into the house from playing with the strays. But now you tell me you've had fleas for weeks now and you are coming over to my house during that time without warning me? Carney, how do I know the fleas didn't come from you?
Well, you probably did get them from the strays. You don't know it's my fault. I don't think it works like that anyway.
Actually, I'm pretty sure it does work that way. I was scrambling in my mind trying to figure out the timeline of the last time she'd been over in regards to the outbreak, and it seemed to kind of line up. I was just furious. I turned to mom mode again and I gave her a stern lecture about treating her dogs and keeping them healthy, not to mention her own health, not to mention my health and any coworkers or hotel guests she might carry fleas to. Basically, I told her to grow up and be an adult, that fleas weren't funny, and explained what she needed to do to get rid of them. I even gave her some of the stuff I'd been using on my cats and around the house. She sulked and acted all offended like I was being nasty and mean, even though I was just trying to wake her up. To this day, I'm convinced the damn fleas came from her. I've continued to work with the feral cat population in the years since and have never had a problem with fleas again. And the worst part was she just tried to laugh it off. Remember, boys and girls, don't invite Carney. At this point, I was rather sick of her crap and avoided inviting her over anymore. Yet, I continue to take her calls and answer her text messages purely for the entertainment value. And trust me, she continued to be entertaining. Yikes. Okay, Carney? Oh boy. See, I remember when I was a kid, I used to think fleas were no big deal sort of thing. Oh, dogs have fleas, that's just how it is. But eventually you learn what kind of damage fleas can do in other parasites, to be frank. In fact, I'm pretty sure that parasite-borne illnesses are what have killed humans more than anything else, and you can fact check me on that, because you can get a parasite pretty much anywhere in the world. Whether it be foodborne, waterborne, a freaking mosquito. Mosquito's considered a parasite, right? This story's called Ham Friend Thinks Tweet is About Her and Blocks Me. Ham Friend, 22 female, and I, 24 female, have been friends since the time we pursued our diplomas. She was 17 and I was 19 then. Ham was always on the other end of the weighing scale, and I too was overweight, except I wasn't inching towards obesity. Last year, I decided to turn my life around and shed the pounds for good. I started off weighing 143 pounds, 65 kilograms, and now I weigh about 103 pounds, or 47 kilograms. 65 kilograms may not seem like a lot, but I am only 4'10" for reference. I start tweeting on about how important it was to take care of your body, not directed at anyone, and sometimes would go on to like tweets that mentioned about double standards where women would ask men for their height, but men can't do the same and ask their weight. Ham sees this, gets mad, and blocks without a reason. She still keeps me on her Instagram though. Not that I took any offense. I genuinely miss the tweets where she proclaims saying she is only single because she is choosy as frogs. That's all. Anyway, what still makes me furious to this day is when Ham embezzled the class funds when we were enrolled in the same college and got away without any consequences. We had a lecturer who stated that he would give us a total of $300 to get ourselves pizzas and have a class party towards the end of both semesters in the academic year. As the class's head, I was given the first $150, the second $150 to be given on the second semester. But the class never spent a dime until the semester was approaching an end. I knew it wasn't my money and kept it in a safe in a jar at home to ensure I can withdraw it to spend it on pizzas for the class when they wanted. Ham, one day before the class ordered pizzas in semester 1, jokingly asks if I had spent the money on myself, which triggered me for unknown reasons, and I said I hadn't and was just waiting for everyone to agree on when they would order the pizzas. Also note that it was only this Ham that was looking forward to devouring the food with the $150 day after day. The day comes and we all spend the $150 on pizzas and give some of it to the lecturer who is generous with us. The second semester begins and I happen to not be present in his class on that day. The lecturer then proceeds to make Ham in charge of the next $150. Big mistake. My class, with Ham being the exception, were never keen on having pizza parties. No one ever brought the topic up on spending the remaining $150 until Ham admits she had splurged the money on herself. Note that we are all shocked because the money does not belong to her, and she brushes it off saying she would repay the class. She never does. After the second semester, we are all grouped in different classes, much to her convenience because no one would bring up the topic on her having a go with the classes fund. But no, someone did bring it up when we were grouped in the same class again, and a boy who did not belong to our first class asked her, "You don't feel ashamed to tell everyone that you spent money that wasn't yours?" Ham gets mad offended and goes on venting the whole day to my clique. Yes, Ham was part of my clique, but we were never tightly knit or anything. 2 years on, the boy and I became best friends. Ham and I now have a fallout because she thinks me talking about being healthy was directed at her. her, not my loss. Good riddance. Anytime I see or hear say the phrase good riddance, I can only think of Spider-Man 3 when he flushes Sandman down that water pipe thing, and he's just like, good riddance, or something like that. Anyway, embezzlement sucks. It's not very nice to do. OP's ex-friend, Ham, definitely not the most responsible, and she's definitely insecure about her weight because she's seeing all this directed toward her when it was definitely not. However, I must say this. OP, it's great that you lost weight. It's great that you're healthy. However, I do sense a little bit of resentment towards her for her weight. Just a bunch of comments about her being excited about the party when it didn't really much pertain to the story. Then again, it could be used to show how she's just not very responsible and selfish in that she was excited for a party and then she went and spent the money that was supposed to be for the party that she was the one who was most excited for it. So I could be reading into it incorrectly, so forgive me if I am. Seems Ham's got some impulse control problems, which can cause a lot of problems in your life. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.